Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Dennis Allen met with reporters today after practice. One of the things that he did talk about, real quick, number 6, if we could muse, Jimmy Graham returned to practice today. We all know the episode Jimmy Graham had on Friday night. He was arrested out in L.A. He was behaving oddly in a public place. They thought he was under the influence of drugs. The Saints released a statement saying he might have had a seizure, a medical episode. Was back at practice today. Here was Dennis Allen on Jimmy.
Yeah, look, I thought he looked good today. We're going to keep evaluating that, but certainly that was good to see the type of day he had today. He's a big target, and made some plays in a contested environment. A couple of plays across the middle, a couple of red zone plays. So things that I've seen him do in the past, I saw him doing today, and that's a good sign.
I want to know what happened in L.A. Not just out of this isn't just sort of morbid curiosity, but I think everyone has that component. But did Jimmy Graham have a medical episode because he has some type of condition that they need to discover what that is? Or did he have an episode that was onset by a substance he took? I do not know the answer. I am not trying to speculate or be reckless or careless in any respect. Please don't misunderstand me. I don't know the answer. There's a very real question, though. If Jimmy Graham was in L.A. when the Saints were there practicing and getting ready for a game, and he's out doing what he shouldn't be doing, takes a substance, causes him to lose himself, cognitively for a while, and leads him to be arrested, that's a problem. If Jimmy Graham has a medical condition, that's a great concern. Either way, it does make you look at the roster and go, what do we do here? Specifically when you look at that spot, though, at tight end, a year ago, the Saints did have 4 tight ends on the roster. They had Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill, if you count Taysom as a tight end, which we do for these purposes. They had Adam Troutman, and they kept Nick Vanette. So we've seen that in the past where they will keep 4. They've got both Juwan and Taysom back this year as well. And then you have Foster Moreau, who really, for all intents and purposes, replaces Nick Vanette, right? So what you're kind of looking for a replacement is a replacement for the Adam Troutman role, who they were trying to develop into a pass catcher. And Jimmy Graham would fit that mold. But this issue really calls into question whether or not he is a viable option for you. And then beyond that, what you do at quarterback also, if you keep a third quarterback, and I say if because it's something we're going to circle back to here just in a moment that Jeff Duncan brought up. If you keep a third quarterback, then you don't have the luxury of another roster spot somewhere. That extra offensive lineman, that defensive back that's a backup DB but also plays on every special team unit, the returner that's also a receiver. You don't have that luxury. Somewhere you're not going to be able to keep a versatile player that you like because you have to have a roster spot for the third quarterback, unless you don't keep a third quarterback. And that is what Jeff Duncan suggested earlier. Now, to be very clear, I'm not being salacious here. And Jeff so I'm not putting words in his mouth. Jeff wasn't suggesting this either. The only point he was making about Jameis, well, listen to what Jeff Duncan said in hour 1 about Jameis.
I don't have any intel on this, so I'm just throwing it out there. But why wouldn't Jameis Winston be vulnerable? Jake Haener has played very well. Derek Carr has shown that he's incredibly durable in his 9-year career. Winston has not had a good camp in any way. He's had a few flash plays in preseason, but you have the luxury of Taysom Hill on the roster. If you did, heaven forbid, have to replace Carr because of injury, you've got a guy that's proven he's won in the league as a starting quarterback, a veteran, if you don't feel comfortable with Haener.
Again, no breaking news or anything there. But that is a very real question. If you're the Saints, you have to ask yourself this. If something happens to Derek Carr, who do you want? Who gives you the best chance to keep the train on the tracks. The Teddy Bridgewater role, right? Back in 2019 or 28, whatever, when Breeze jammed his thumb on, it was 18, when Breeze jammed his thumb on Aaron Donald's helmet. Who gives you the best chance to win if Derek Carr's out for 2, 3, 4 games? And maybe that answer is Jameis Winston. I think it is. That is the answer. But if you're weighing it, do you think Jake Haener has upside in the league? And if something, remember when Breeze got hurt, Jameis went in. He was the backup that week. Jameis went in the game. But then they prepared, that would have been in 21. Then they prepared Taysom to be the starter in the subsequent weeks. There's no reason you couldn't do the same thing. If you don't have Jameis on the roster, Jake Haener could be your backup quarterback. Something happens to Carr on a given Sunday. Jake Haener goes in. He's prepared all week to be the backup. And then after that, you prepare Taysom as your starting quarterback until Derek Carr can come back. Like, that's an option. We've seen him do it before. And that would free up a roster spot. Now, if you feel like Jameis is that indispensable because of his ability, he's been a starter in the past, he's thrown for 5,000 yards, he is undeniably a better starting quarterback, a more accomplished starting quarterback in the NFL than Taysom Hill or Jake Haener. That's not even debatable. So yes, he's a better option in that sense, but is it more valuable to have the extra roster spot instead of a just in case? It was a very interesting question brought up by Jeff Duncan. And when Dennis Allen was talking about, cutting down the roster, he was asked about, how they go about filling out, what they have said, how they go about filling out the roster as they get toward cutdowns.
I think you're looking at the total picture in terms of the football team, the individual position coaches typically are kind of looking at their position and what fits for their position and the roles within that particular group. Coordinators are looking at their side of the ball and how does it affect their side of the ball. Obviously, Riz is looking at special teams, and myself, Mickey, Michael, Kai, Jeff, we're all kind of looking at the whole totality of the team and how everything fits.
Special teams is obviously a big part of that. Position groups are going to have your position coach have their say. He said a lot there without saying a damn thing, and I don't blame him for it. But, the closer you get, there are things that are a given. The guys that are roster locks. And you get to the point to ask the question of saying, who are roster spots 51, 52, 53, and what are you trying to accomplish with those spots? And maybe the way to, part of what has gauged my thinking on these conversations, as long as you and I have been having them, has been the thought that you are going to keep a third quarterback. And that is a disadvantage for a team because a third quarterback ain't going to play. So you have to reserve a coveted one of 53 roster spots for a player that is not going to play for you. You're basically just forfeiting a roster spot to protect a young asset for the future. Unless you don't have to. Because Taysom gives you that opportunity. It was interesting. It was a very interesting conversation with Jeff Duncan. Now, I think Jameis is going to make the team, and I think Haener is going to make the team. But there are always surprises. And I'll say this now, you're going to hear me say it a lot over the next week plus. It's never that 53-man roster when they make the cutdowns, it's never the final 53. It's the first 53. Because the day they'll announce a 53-man roster, and the next day, maybe within hours, someone who makes the 53 is getting cut. Because they're going to look around at 31 other teams, see other guys that got cut and go, yep, I want him. And so they'll make a roster move to cut someone on their team in time. It's always the first 53. It's never the final 53. So keep that in mind as well. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.